Hello there everyone, today we're taking a look at a little game by the name of Brigador, and I say little and that's not really the case, but Brigador is by Stellar Jockeys, would be the name of the dev. Brigador is a kind of vehicular destruction sandbox, you could say. It is more or less a game where you take the part of a morally ambiguous mercenary company, pilot mechs, tanks, and hovercraft throughout a fully destructible city, and blow everything up and then leave and get paid for it. Which sounds pretty good to me, so welcome to Brigador. There are two main modes available. You have a campaign and a freelance. Now, campaign is mostly used for actually getting money, essentially, and also teaching you how to play the game. And every mission has a selection of 4 different loadouts pre-selected for you, which are different vehicles with different weapons on them. However, the main, I guess you could say, meat of the game, even though the campaign is quite good and teaches you how to play very well and has a lot of variety in it, the freelance is where you're going to be spending most of your time. This is actually what all the money is for. So, acquisitions is what you spend all of the money that you collect on. All your millions of dollars that you get for beating missions. You get different amounts depending on what you do, but generally speaking, you need to actually complete the missions for your full payout. Dying and failing the mission will give you a tiny fraction of what you actually earned. But as far as I'm aware, you can't actually lose money. Now, there are various things you can unlock. So first we have pilots, and pilots are essentially a difficulty modifier. In the freelance mode, pilots start you start at a specific difficulty, and this basically determines like enemy number and damage and things like that. As far as I can tell, it's not really explained, to be honest, but that seems to be what it is. And then every mission you go on in the freelance mode has multiple sort of levels to it that you continue on as you beat the next one. And some of them even allow you to leave early if you want. If you feel that it's getting a little difficult, you don't have enough ammo and stuff like that, and you want to try and get out early, you can do that. But of course you'll get paid less, but you'll still actually get paid as opposed to perhaps dying and losing almost all of your money. And your bonuses and payout multipliers and things like that are determined by the actual pilot you use. But the main meat here are the vehicles. So there are 3 different vehicle types in this game. There are mechs, which are big and stompy, or little and adorable. And they have the ability to kind of shield themselves by crouching down and using these kind of front bits as like shielding to reduce damage. They tend to have very heavy mounts on them, or at least a good amount of firepower to them. And they, of course, can move in one direction and rotate the top portion of their bodies all around for good aiming. There are also tanks, which have a lot of armor and a good amount of like forward momentum. They have the ability to sort of bull rush forward and pound through enemies and cover and things like that. And they're also quite low, so they're harder to hit sometimes. And they often have potent turrets and things like that. And you also have anti-grav sort of platforms. They're basically like hovercraft. These can actually fly over low cover. They're the most difficult of the vehicle types, I would say, to use in this game because they tend to be the most fragile, but they have a lot of shielding, as you can see. The way this works I'll explain in a moment, but they're also a bit high-tech. They are often equipped with lasers and things like that, and they tend to rely more on shielding than on hull. But, of course, they're very maneuverable. But you also have to worry about the fact that you generally need to turn the entire vehicle to actually change your weapon facing. Unlike tanks, which have turrets, and mechs, which of course the entire torso of the mech can move, these you actually have to change the facing of the entire vehicle. So that makes them a bit difficult to use, but they're very rewarding to use, and they're pretty cool as well. So you can buy any number of these vehicles and use them. And as you can see, there are also different factions. There are Loyalist, Corvids, and Spacers, and these are also the factions that you'll be fighting. So, Loyalists are kind of your standard, like, military sort of PMC is what you are, essentially, style vehicles and weapons. Corvids are kind of lower tech, like, put together things, as you can see, with sometimes even like scrappy kind of stuff, and spacers are very high-tech, very advanced machines that tend to be based a lot on energy weapons and shielding. And you also have a lot of equipment, by the way. There are a huge number of weapons and things to choose from, which is amazing. The variety in this game is pretty incredible, and I really, really like that. I also love that everything has like a cool description. Some of them are really funny. Some of them are just a nice little bit of, like, here's what this does, you know. But there's a lot to actually go through. What do I have 3 million right now, so I'd actually like to unlock another heavy weapon because I only have 2 of those. I don't know what the harvester is. A siege howitzer, 305mm MIRV. A MIRV sounds amazing in this game. It does a crap ton of damage. I think I'll requisition the MIRV. Boop. There we go. No description yet available. That's okay. But it looks pretty sweet. And also, everything is modeled on the vehicle that you choose, which is great. Operations are the actual missions that you undertake, which right now we only have the first 2, so you need to unlock these as well. And each of these has different districts, which are the individual missions, individual areas that you have to clear. And you can see if it has a chance for exiting early, if you choose. This one has 4 districts, and you go all the way up to some really long ones. This one has 39 districts and no chance of an early exit, which is probably why it's called the Closed Casket Special. But chances are if you clear that, you're going to get millions upon millions of dollars. And you also have some interesting intel on the enemies that you'll be facing, and of course the things that you can pilot yourself, and some lore behind the story of the game and the various factions and things like that, which is very cool. And you have to buy this all as well, but it's not particularly expensive. So, let's get into the actual game now. Freelance. So, choose my pilot, choose the vehicle. Let's go with a mech, because that seems like the most fun thing to show off. All the vehicles do perform very differently, I will say that. So, let's see. I think I'm going to use the... I like the Broodmare. The Broodmare is fun. It's pretty strong, it's pretty fast, it's got a lot of shielding. So I can use the Harvester now that I have that. As you can see, it's actually, like I said, fully modeled on the thing itself. I'm going to use the Harvester, and as the secondary, I'm going to use, let's see, I have a 105mm cannon. I've got this really pretty cool airburst cannon that's pretty sweet. The Duchess high explosive dual-purpose chain gun, and the ridiculously fast-firing 20mm armor-piercing caseless Banshee chain gun. As you can see, they all have different statistics versus how much cover they can penetrate, the amount of ammo they have, the different types of ammo they have. As you can see, those little symbols here are very relevant because different ammo stations, different places in the actual levels, refill ammo of a different type, so you have to be aware of what ammunition you're carrying. I think I'm going to use the Banshee, probably. Yeah, I'm going to use the Banshee. Seems like a good combination. Something with very high ammo capacity to complement a heavy weapon with very low ammo capacity. And you also have a special that you can take. In this case, the only thing I have are smoke canister projectors, which are very much like real-life smoke canister projectors that tanks use. They act essentially the same way. And we're going to do the first strike mission, so deploy. And here we go. So, first thing you may notice is the art style is incredible. It uses an old-school isometric art style reminiscent of older games on things like... I almost want to say it kind of reminds me of like an Amiga art style, only it's like actually 3D now. It's one of those very old-school art styles that's actually been rendered with new technology. It looks very, very cool, and I really appreciate the art style because it's not something that I've seen very much of. Honestly, I've always loved isometric games in general, and this one pulls it off really well because of the variety in vehicles and terrains that you're actually going across. There are a huge number of different places that you're going to be visiting, and they all have a lot of detail on them. As you can see, there's all these stacked up shipping containers here. There's like little diners, there's a bar right there, and like some sort of, looks like apartment buildings and things. There's a gas station over there, which of course you can blow up. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's like little oil derrick things over there that you can blow up. There's entire huge like graveyard sectors in this sort of futuristic city. There's just a tremendous amount of actual visual detail to the environment, which is very, very cool. Now, What you may also be noticing is that this is really, really awesome. I am a giant stompy mech, and I am destroying everything in the way. So, the actual gameplay itself is, as I said, in an isometric style. And your vehicle is armed with whatever weapons you choose, and there is also a randomize button, which is very cool. And depending on what vehicle you choose, a mech, an anti-grav, or a tank, you have a different style of movement and aiming and things like that, and also some different abilities. Mechs can stomp, like that, which is very nice. It helps you get rid of some low cover around you and things like that. It helps conserve ammo, although you don't want to stomp these because they explode when they are destroyed. There we go. So this is that crazy chain gun. As you can see, it just absolutely rips through everything. It tears through places and has a ridiculously high rate of fire due to caseless ammunition. And the arcs of fire for your weapons are represented by these lines. The purple line is always your secondary, and the blue line is your primary. So as you can see, a lot of weapons are capable of indirect fire. The Harvester seems to be able to lob these MIRV rounds at quite the high angle. So, the actual objects of the levels are to go around and complete your given tasks, which are generally three main things you can see in the top right there. There are a number of marked structures you need to destroy. That could be anything from these big air defense cannons to like great leader propaganda statues and all kinds of things like that. There will also be these marked enemy captains, which are more difficult, more well-armed vehicles, more akin to things that you would be piloting yourself, and have better AI, it seems like, as well. And the garrison stat up there is just enemies. There's the number of enemies in the level. And you have to generally get about like 80 or 90% of those destroyed to complete that objective. There we go. Now these are ammo depots, and that's what I was talking about when I was mentioning that every weapon type has an ammo symbol, and these depots fill that specific ammo symbol. So these are usually like cannons, essentially. And you get extra points for these, as you can see up here, there's depots, substations, and comm towers. Those are secondary objectives. So you actually get extra points, or money in this case, for destroying the ammo depots. So obviously it's a bit of risk-reward, because when you destroy them, you can't rearm at them like that. But the amount of money that you get for doing so is generally worth it. You just want to make sure, usually to do it shortly before you leave the level or something like that. And also enemies will sometimes drop ammo like this. Whoops. But you can accidentally destroy it. So try not to do that. And those over there are some substations. So let's try out this Harvester and see what that does. Whoa! Okay, yep, that was a good unlock. I'm happy with this. I'm happy with my choice. It's sort of like a mortar, which I guess is kind of what a MIRV is. It's just a lot fancier and tends to go into the atmosphere. So there are a large number of enemies in this game, a huge number of enemy types, because of the three different factions. They are kind of randomly generated in the, not in the campaign. In the campaign you face a predetermined faction and specific composition of units on each mission, which again is why I would recommend starting with the campaign to help teach you how to play the game. But in the free play mode, the meat of the game, every mission, although the actual areas you're in, the maps, are the same for each mission, they are different for every individual mission. But I mean, if I do this particular campaign, here I am always going to go to this level first. But the actual enemies and their exact placements and the factions and the makeup of what factions I'm facing in any given level are going to be different every time, which helps with the replayability a lot, because like you saw, the amount of weapons and vehicles there are in the game is pretty huge. There are something like 45 weapons, or 40 weapons, I believe, and like 45 vehicles. So that adds up to a pretty absurd number of possible combinations, and there's a captain enemy over there. Now, there's not. This MIRV thing's amazing. No wonder it has such a low ammo capacity, because that is ridiculously powerful. But that means that not only is there just an incredible amount of variety for you to choose from, and when you start unlocking a huge amount of stuff, the randomize button is going to be very well used, because you're just gonna go into a mission with random stuff each time and see how far you can get. But that also means that every mission is a bit different, even though you're in the same map, because the enemies you face, and so the strategies you must use to overcome them tend to be different, because of course Corvids are low-tech, often rush towards you, have a lot of ballistic weapons and things like that. Spacers have lots of energy weapons and are very high-tech, lots of heavily shielded units and things like that. So, you know, you gotta be careful about what you're actually going up against, and the game is not easy, especially when you're using a lot of the higher difficulty, to begin with, captains. So the way the health system works is interesting. You do not have a way to repair your hull, that green meter up there to the top left. But what you do have is the blue meter, your shield, and your shield can actually be restored by killing enemies. You see a lot of the enemies have been dropping those blue orbs, which are shield restoring, like, energy orbs. And some enemies, especially heavily shielded enemies, drop more than others. And those, like that truck that I just destroyed that dropped a whole bunch of them, that's like a shield truck. So it tends to be very heavily shielded and a little harder to kill, but which is why I used the harvester against it. But it's worth it for the big restoration and shield that you get from it. But you'll also notice that my shield is actually decaying here, because you have two sort of maximums for your shield. Your normal basic maximum that your shield starts at when you start a mission new, and the actual full maximum that the gauge can actually go up to. So 300 shield is the max, the standard maximum for this particular mech. However, it can actually go up to something like 450-ish or something like that. But when you exceed the standard maximum, it starts to decay slowly. Which means that although a lot of this game involves some kind of slow, methodical planning and plotting around so you don't get caught out by a bunch of enemies you didn't see, because as you can see, you have quite the vision range. By looking around, you can see ahead of you a lot, and you need to make sure not to get caught out in the middle of a bunch of craziness and blown up really quickly by enemies flanking you from every possible direction. You also don't want to accidentally waste the advantage of having such a large amount of extra shielding. You don't want to squander the shield as it decays away slowly, and you're going around the areas slowly and things like that. So it's another kind of risk-reward element that comes with wanting to dive into battles with all the extra survivability that you have when you have a large amount of shield stocked up, which is cool. So you're probably already getting the idea, I suppose, of how the game works. It is this, and it does it very well. You'll also, of course, notice that the levels are entirely destructible. You could flatten literally everything. So here, as you can see, this is the early leave area. I can go into this mission second if I want to and actually beat it and then leave the campaign. Or I can do this mission to get more money and then do this mission and then complete the entire campaign, which I'd like to do because it will earn me more. So that's what we're going to do. But as you can also see, your shield, health, and ammo amounts are constant between the missions, so you've got to be careful with how much of your resources you're spending. So as you can see right there, I actually deployed some of those tank-style smoke canisters forward to give me a little bit of time to kind of burst those guys down so that they weren't engaging me from such a long range. Now, this level I think shows you a good amount of the variety in areas, because you're seeing a pretty advanced selection here compared to the last area of terrains. You're seeing this big, like, shipping area here that you actually start in, but as we go forward, you're going to see some kind of grasslandy areas with some nice houses. You're going to see this big dock area and a little bit of a nightlife city kind of district. There's a lot of terrain variety, and that's very cool, because not only is it really well realized and looks excellent because of the very, very awesome graphic style of this game, but that also gives a really cool feeling of kind of interesting authenticity to the game, because you are a sort of mercenary force invading this city under contract, and you're actually traveling through its various districts, and it makes it feel like you're actually doing that. You're actually traveling through the entire place and all of its warts and all. You have, you know, huge areas of, like, giant tombs and extremely fancy, high-end, well-manicured mansion areas and things like that. You've got everything. So I like that they actually put that much variety in the areas of the game, because the enemy variety is huge, but that's not the only bit of variety that matters. Now, as you can see, I'm actually kind of screwed here, because those enemies with the eyeballs above their heads will actually set off alarms. And alarms will cause a lot of enemies to come knocking as soon as they're set off. And that can be a problem. So I'm gonna crouch down here, which helps me shield myself from damage. Just kind of hunker down and start destroying the crap out of everything. And those enemies will also, well, alarms will cause some high security walls to raise in certain areas of the city, which are the hardest walls to destroy. Rest assured, you can blow them up, but it takes a little longer. And some more ammunition. So you're kind of seeing the evolution of the areas as you go through, because that place is now just totally, completely flattened. And there's so much detail. You can even see the little flashlights that these guys have around their necks, which is a bit of the lore here. You're seeing this little shanty, or not shantytown, sorry, there are shantytown areas, but that's not one of them. This little box fort style area here. You're seeing these, this was like some sort of storage, like oil storage or something like that. You're seeing this is like a military base, obviously. Container yards. The actual amount of visual detail in this game is actually surprising and really impressive, because it's not easy to create an art style like this and have it look good. And parking lots, by the way, just filled to the brim with cars, are some of the most consistently satisfying things to just stomp through in a giant mech, by the way. I just want to point that out. I just love that kind of small, weak things like this you can just walk over with a mech, a large one. There are also small, fast mechs that actually have the ability, instead of crouching down like this, because they're already quite small, they actually raise their torso up over cover and things like that, which is kind of nifty. There's just, there's a lot to like in this game, I feel. The game had an early access period. I don't know exactly how long it was, to be honest. I've got to be totally honest with you, I didn't know about this game until a couple months ago. Which is kind of a shame, actually, which is one of the reasons I wanted to cover it, because it's not... I haven't heard all that much about it, which is sad, because it deserves recognition, because it's very unique. It is highly enjoyable. Oh, yeah. And, I mean, when's the last time you've seen a game with an art style like this? This kind of old-school, isometric, I suppose... old PC art style is not something that you almost ever see, and it's something that you see done well even less, but this is done very well. So yeah, the actual feedback I have to say that the game gives you is also very good. The sound assets for the game, for all the weapons, the destruction, and taking damage especially is also important, of course. All of those are very well delivered. I mean, like, the cannons, the mortars, and the howitzers and things like that, they all sound really, really good. There's this big, meaty, like, boom when you fire the, like, the howitzers and mortars, and there's, like, a chain mortar that shoots, like, 10 mortars at once, by the way, which is just as good as it sounds. And all those sorts of weapons have a really nice feedback to them. I mean, look at that, that's crazy. And, you really do feel like you're just shredding your way through a city. No matter what kind of vehicle or what size of vehicle or how armed it is you're piloting, you feel a really satisfying and well put together experience in this game. And I think that its early access period, no matter how long it was, because like I said, I honestly don't know, really did serve it very well, apparently, because they have created a very well refined actual experience at the end of things. I'm just gonna smash through some of these trains here and need to rearm myself. Just walk across these buildings. I'm sure no one will notice. I don't want to stop in case I accidentally blow up the ammo depot before I get the chance to use it. The ammo depots aren't infinite, by the way. There we go. And now we get to go to the last area. Deploy here, and this is the last area. So, I see there's some enemies over there. Shred those guys, pop some smoke over here so I can advance under the cover of the smoke. And probably shoot a Merv over there to blow all those up. Yes, reload, yes. When everything goes well, it is just a hugely satisfying experience. And I swear that I've played a couple of games like this before when I was a kid, but I cannot for the life of me remember their names, which sucks, because I want to say, yeah, it reminds me of blankety blank. but I cannot remember what they were. And it really does. It reminds me of some of those older kind of... a lot of them actually were mechs, although some of them were also... I mean, like, Battlezone was a little bit... It was kind of in that era, although this isn't all that much like Battlezone, but it was that era of gaming, where a lot of vehicular combat games were coming out. Only, unfortunately, we haven't seen as many of those recently. And mech games and vehicular combat games were like my jam as a kid, and they need to come back, because mechs are never not cool. Giant mechs are always fun, and there's no reason not to have them. Every game should have giant mechs. The next Elder Scrolls game should have giant mechs. So anyway. Oh, what's that? A giant obelisk thing? Cool. Yeah. So, this is Brigador, everyone. It is available, I should also say the price, that's probably important. So, the game itself is available for 20 bucks on Steam, which I think for the amount of content you're getting is a very, very fair price, because the amount of replayability that you get from all these different scenarios in free play, all of the campaign missions, and the ridiculous amount of variety in vehicles and weapons that you can put together. The actual amount of stuff that you can put together for yourself is kind of crazy, is huge. So that's a pretty fair price, but also I want to point out that for $30, or for $10 more if you decide to upgrade to that edition later, you can get the soundtrack and an art book, I believe, or an audiobook maybe, of the game as well. And the soundtrack has been put together specifically for this game by an artist whose name I cannot remember for the life of me. That's terrible. I had it written down at some point, actually, although that's been a while. Anyway, by an artist, yes, that's what they're called, an artist, totally. And the soundtrack is great. The soundtrack has this kind of, I don't know, I would say like late 90s, mid to late 90s PC game vibe to it. It actually kind of reminds me of playing Earthsiege 2. If you've never played Earthsiege 2, by the way, look that up. That game was amazing. Also a mech game, by the way. Why don't we have any, like, awesome mech games coming out? We need more of those. So, I would have to recommend that, if you can swing the extra 10 bucks for that, because the soundtrack is great, and having it to listen to whenever you want is pretty cool, and it also helps to support the developers of a very unique, very well-done game that is definitely an early access success story that deserves to have more attention paid to it than currently is being paid to it. So I apologize, guys, for taking so long to get to this one. I should have covered it quite some time ago, I just haven't had the opportunity. But this is my official apology for that, because my goodness is this game great, and it is just a very enjoyable vehicular destruction fest kind of sandboxy romp through a incredibly varied and well-realized world of morally ambiguous, isometric, destructible everything. It's a bit of a mouthful. They may want to not put that on the Steam page. That would probably take up the entire thing. But this is Brigador. So, 20 bucks on Steam. The link is, of course, as always, in the description below this video, so you can check it out if you want. I would have to say, please do. It is just an incredible amount of fun, and I think I would like to see more from these guys. I'd like to see what else they can do. I don't know if they plan on adding to this, because it's been a little while since it's come out. I don't know, what their plans are going forward, but I hope to see more from them, because it's clear they can make some really sweet stuff, and they've had a pretty cool idea for a type of game that, let's be honest, we've not seen for a very long time in the world of PC gaming, and I'm glad to have it back. Brigador, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then there's a button for that. If you didn't, there's also a button for that. And, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you next time. How much money did I make? 2.6 million. Not a bad haul for horribly murdering a bunch of people. Good job.